For our new series, we're going to be looking at some lessons from the life of Elijah. And Elijah was a prophet of God. And I want just to give you some of the background to the time when Elijah was prophesying. It was something like 850 years before Christ. And he was a prophet in the land of Israel. We're looking at 1 Kings, and in 1 Kings the first chapters deal with Solomon's reign, and he was reigning over the single kingdom of Israel. And then his sons fell out, and the kingdom was divided into two nations, the kingdom of Israel in the north and the kingdom of Judah in the south. The kingdom of Israel in the north is sometimes called the kingdom of the 10 tribes because that's where most of the tribes were based. Whereas the kingdom of Judah in the south was comprised of the tribe of Judah. And if you read through the remaining chapters after Solomon's reign of 1 Kings, you'll find that there are accounts there of the different kingdoms, the different dynasties, or perhaps we would use the term today, regimes. The kingdom of Israel lasted for something like 250 years. And in that time they had 8 different dynasties or 8 different series of kings. Whereas the kingdom of Judah lasted about twice that time, about 500 years, and it had just one dynasty the whole time. And a couple of the kings of Judah, Asa, reigned for 41 years. And Joash reigned for 40 years. And Uzziah, you know that verse in Isaiah, in the year that King Uzziah died, he reigned for 52 years. They were all kings of Judah. But looking at the kings of Israel, we find a different story with Jeroboam, who reigned for 22 years. That wasn't bad. And his son took over from him, but then his son was killed by another king, Baasha, who reigned for 24 years. And if you read the story in 1 Kings, you'll see that time after time after time with these kings, the writer tells us they did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. In fact, one of the kings, Zimri, who was a commander of the forces, he reigned for a very short time, and he set fire to the palace and he died inside the palace. Then we come to a man called Omri. He as well was a commander of the army. So you see there was regime change after regime change after regime change. And then Omri reigned for 12 years. And his son is the one that we want to take particular interest in, Ahab. And Ahab reigned for 22 years, and he made the capital of the northern kingdom a town called Samaria. He married Jezebel, and in doing so, he was able to make peace with one of his rivals. But Jezebel was an idolater. Jezebel persuaded Ahab, who wasn't a very strong character, to abandon the God of Israel, the God of the Jews, and to worship Baal, and to set up Asherah poles, which were shrines where they could worship Baal. And it's into this kingdom of Israel that Elijah worked as a prophet. And we'll read about him in 1 Kings. We'll pick it up in chapter 17, 18, and 19 for this study.